I introduced to you Matthew Zapruder, who is our inaugural marquee poet for the Fringe Poets Reading Series. As a series, we're seeking to challenge preconceptions, taxonomies of poetry, and so we're more than delighted to be able to welcome Mr. Zapruder as a poet exemplifying the lexical vitality, formal ingenuity, and a slippery elusiveness of voice that remind us again and again of our preoccupations with and preconceptions of those forms, categories, taxonomies. Currently a professor at the New School in New York City, Mr. Zapruder was the founding editor of Verse Press, which is now Wave Books. He is the author of American Linden, published in 2002. Do you have copies of that? I do have. You might have a few copies of that if you're lucky enough. And The Pajamaist, which will be for sale after the reading and Q&A. And that was released this year. And again, to witness the intersection of Mr. Zapruder's work with the aforementioned ideals of the Fringe Poets Reading Series, one need look no further than his newest book's title piece, The Pajamaist, which some of you were discussing with him in class earlier. It's, for those of you who don't know, it's a poem that details a speaker's dream about a novel he's writing about the first and greatest of all sufferers, called the Pajamaist. When this pajamist super heroically suffers alone in a room, thrashing about in throes so horrible to watch, they produced great suffering in the one who was watching. He does this to diminish single-handedly the amount of suffering in the world. And with the pajamist intentionally, paradoxically isolating himself to undertake a process for the betterment of others, the poem might read as a sort of optimistic ars poetica. But it's also much greater than that. It's greater than any such confining categorization. It's greater than any reduction to genre. In fact, it challenges that. It's sort of short prose piece amidst the book of poems. This poem bursts with energy from such diverse sources as pop cultural puns, psychoanalytic teasing, para-academic criticism, materialist paranoia, a tone oscillating from sardonic irony to palpable anguish, and a reckless, seductive empathy, sung in lyrical cadences, enhancing the language's content, however discordant or plain they might be. Such achievements pervade not only this piece within the Pajamist, but also the book as a whole, whether Mr. Zapruder is inventing a formally new 20-section long poem under the title 20 Poems for Noel, or ghostly elegiac fragility of the lyrical poem, The Book of Oxygen. Thus, for his exhilarating amplitude of emotion, form, language, and subject matter, it's with honor and excitement that I present to you on behalf of the Fringe Poetry Reading Series, the hilariously zany, dangerously imaginative, thrillingly unpredictable Mr. Matthew Zapruder.
Can you all hear me? Whoa.
Really here.
Well, if lightning strikes, we know who it's going to get. So I look forward to meeting the person discussed in that introduction. He seems like a very exciting person. Thank you all very much for being here, and thank you, Seth, and everyone who had the many people who had things to do with organizing this. And it's a terrific opportunity to be here. And you know, you're very fortunate to have Seth here, someone with energy and intelligence, and mostly for his own poems, which you'll get to know at some point soon, I'm sure. I feel like there should be there's a little clock up here. There's a computer up here and everything. It's like a real. I'm gonna check my email a little bit before I start. I'm just gonna read a few, maybe one poem from my first book, American Linden. And then some poems from the Pajamist and a few new poems kind of mixed in. Okay, so this poem's called Summer Camp, and I'm reading it because it was something that was read and discussed in the class I had a good time visiting today, Professor Wallach's class, it was nice to meet you all. So this poem's called Summer Camp. The day is wearing a white lab coat. It is experimenting on us, which is funny until you stop thinking about it. Today, I'm going to drive my car up into the mountain of distraction where with my cat, Helix, I shall picnic. Towards him I feel only slightly parental, only enough to feed him tiny slivers of moral instruction, which he devours daintily without blinking. Helix doesn't have a twin. He's gray, and his left front paw hurts him, though he has never spoken of it. Past the blankness of his irises is a lake of sadness, from which he was torn many months ago, his mouth and tongue frozen in a repetition of searching. His mother was a sofa, a whole neighborhood of comfort, support, understanding, doors left unlocked, kick the can, let's leave the neighbors with the kids without even formally informing them, and drive a car of distraction along the vanished town of Calico, up into the mountains where we shall picnic. His father was a cloud, as are all the fathers of cats. Try to find one. The trail leads through wet grasses down to the culvert where I taught myself to smoke like a wet idea from which I have just withdrawn, leaving only the tenderness. There was a girl named Holly. We knew each other in the park. We were pinies. Yeah. You know, that was a great reading, Paul. I mean, for real. That really was a great reading. Those poems are beautiful. I really genuinely wanted you to keep going. That was really terrific. So thank you for doing that. Okay. This poem's called The Lark. O green rolling mind of the hills. The telephone is raining, a little carved of late morning shed, where a little blonde body behind an opaque white curtain fails inside it to translate rain and gray into something useless enough to be useful to the fable drinker in the park that's me, thinking, some people in the park, when they run through me, look like they've always been glad to be running from something. Others seem to have just gotten up from placidly keeping bees in a structure built of the feeling they should be feeling a need to leave the valley. Last night, some hazy conversation drifted down the careless hall to wake the newlyweds inside me. Let them never make a sound. Let them be closed until they open their eyes at the same time and try on old hats in silence. Is that what they do? Said the little blonde body to the fable drinker. Here, try on old rain inside me in silence. Try on not trying on that old radiant silence. Try on a longing for music not to be used. Just take 2 steps into the useless around the ancient mountain revolution, that it may gather a few kilowatts of your wanting inside it, for the king who sleeps, to keep him warm and grow his beard for power. Oh, take off your solemn head and bang a little music for longing not to be any sort of ship that sails anyone into the ocean inside him of you know this rain is for us no longer. You know sadness hurts because music, actually right now, in a valley of differential green recalcitrant sadness, inside you hurts. You know you drink too much night, and you say, oh night, you drank too much homemade night, some death wish daughter from a bunch of mother-resembling gestures concocted, and woke still inside me thinking, I'm night, before remembering I'm a sweet green balcony morning over the market breathing people. Oh, rain of a birthday present, wrapped in argument over yesterday's literary supplement. I follow you deeper inside the town of you know how to be caring and not caring, down the hall at 4 a.m. from 2 you loved, failing to be quiet. Oh, caring and not caring outside me quiet. Pass me the green hat with a feather in it. Oh, feather falling in love with the world. This next poem is called There is a Light. And I wrote it I wrote it when I'd spent a long time. I was living somewhere where I could see an all-night market, and that's pretty much what I did, is look at this market. I was living somewhere far away where I didn't know anybody, and so it's kind of addressed to this all-night market. Yes, it is. It's called There Is a Light. Whenever behind your windows I look from my balcony down at you, you are open. At any hour among the pyramids of eggplant and whiskey, Albanian shadows drag their shadows. I could watch this shadow clock for hours and do. It is timing me. And each time your doors part, my lips hydraulical, silently clatter. O solemn, untamed, maternal Albanian market, why at this fuck time of night are you open? Locked within yourself and asking the same thing of me. Small, leaning over the balcony figure, watching your painless hydraulic scar, from both sides open, releasing silence. In silence you have been here forever, since 1993. You assure me with your calm, ancient terror. You force a man who looks on you to doubt his sleep and lack of sleep. O most magnificent pregnant man, you give birth to things surrounded with chocolate and things with chocolate buried inside them. You give birth to pine-scented dishwashing fluids. You give birth to placenta, which some people eat. You give birth to et cetera's every pleasure in every hour. O low market, wearing the naked dress of windows lettered with emerald translucent letters, what pale green inside me memory dress now gives birth to the story of you, giving birth to the story of me, giving birth to my awe of you at 3 a.m., giving birth to a mother of her sleeping children young and free, who with pale green Arabic music leaking from one of her earrings, looks up with her gaze and unlocks me, then turns into her drifting toward the opposite and therefore holy direction. Skip around a little bit. Don't ever mess with the plan. That's a bad thing to do because then you're in trouble. But that's what I'm going to do. This poem is called Poem for Grace Paley. Probably most of you know who Grace Paley is. She's an American short story writer and poet who's, like, I kind of think of her as the Yoda of American poetry. She's pretty amazing. She said a good thing to me. I was reading with her, which was really nerve-wracking because she's amazing. And so I wrote this poem actually for her to read this reading. And after I read, I got down and she stood up next to me and they were introducing her with this really very effusive introduction and, you know, all of it true. But then she just put her hand on my shoulder and she leaned over and she said, I wish they would cut that shit out. That was good to know. So I thought it's good to get somewhere where you can wish that. But this is called Poem for Grace Paley. People say they don't understand poetry, meaning how must we proceed? Be extremely tempered, dream a careful dream. People say we're living a quiet life, lost in a forest of pronouns, asleep for 1,000 years. People said his wife passed through him, an arrow made of smoke. People say, whatever you do, don't hitch a ride on a sepulcher. People said it was the future then, and we liked falling into mirrors. People said we were never sorry we couldn't travel both and be one traveler. People said, what was it like? It was like an airport terminal without any televisions, like waiting a long time for a door to arrive. In Outlaw Josie Wales, Chief Dan George says, that rock candy's not for eating, it's for looking through. In 1981, an announcer said, Ralph Sampson's so tall he could reach out and touch Uranus. I was 13. Earth was a couch. Without any irritable reaching after fact or reason, I placed thousands of sweet tarts into my mouth. 5 years later, someone said they saw Diane P. kissing a girl in a car, and they punched the window on the passenger's side in, and I laughed. And it's been, as people say, downhill from there, meaning until this moment I have been coasting, but from this one forward, grace, I vow I shall coast no more. This poem is called Little Voice. I woke this morning to the sound of a little voice saying, this life, it was good while it lasted, but I just can't take it any longer. I'm going to stop shaving my teeth and chew my face. I'm going to finish inventing that way to turn my blood into thread and knit a sweater the shape of a giant machete and chop my head right off. The leaves had a green aspect, all their faces turned down towards the earth. This is exactly how I wanted to act, but I didn't know where the little voice had hidden. And anyway, who talks like that? What a loss. Another tiny, brilliant mind switched off by that same big, boring finger. Clearly life is a drag, by which I mean a net, that keeps pulling the most unsavory and useful boots we either put on lamenting or eat, with the hooks of some big idea gripping the sides of our mouths and yanking them upwards in a conceptual grimace. Said the little voice, that is. I was just half listening, 1/4 wondering what the little park the window looked onto was named, and 1/4 thanking the war I knew was somewhere busy returning all those limbs to their phantoms. This is a poem called Minnesota, which is a place where I had the misfortune of living for 6 months. It's a bad relationship decision. Anyway, I broke my ankle when I was there about 2 weeks afterwards, and I was lying on this couch for like 3 months on Percocet pretty much the whole time. And so this was a poem I wrote when I was there, along with a lot of other garbage, but this I think this one makes it, I think. Minnesota. This blue vinyl couch you bought in St. Paul is winter sky color, blue but also a little white, with cracks like the robin's egg that fell onto what for 8 months was my balcony, where Russian mothers left their babies for me to watch. For hours I would do nothing but dream I was writing a letter. The railing was painted that green, generally intended to make you feel you were not even intentionally being punished. I wasn't lonely, I was 22, and knew lots of things I've now forgotten, like how they made the great rivers in Siberia run backwards. There's a city called Olafsfjordur, where every winter hulls are left locked in ice so they do not rust, and what all of that had to do with me. Now on my back in Minnesota, I'm reading about phlox. The blue phlox is blue and can grow to such great heights it will no longer fit in any more poems. Unlike in the young drift plains or the southern tip of the Canadian Shield, glaciers here did not, as they melted, deposit fertile soil, only boulders and stones. I see a squirrel I recognize. It's so silent I can hear his onyx nails click on the frozen snow. He watches a tree until it moves. He has one mane and an alternate nest, and lives with other squirrels in a temporary winter community called an aggregation. I hope no great watchman comes with claws to take him in the night, for he needs just one more day to master techniques of gliding from tree to tree, so he can find just what he needs, for that is what he is looking for. And one more new poem, and then I'll read a couple of more from the Pajamaist, and then I will stop. This poem is called Aglow. Hello, everyone. Hello, you. Here we are under this sky. Where were you Tuesday? I was at the El Rancho Motel in Gallup. Someone in one of the nameless rooms was dying. Slowly the ambulance came, just another step towards the end. An older couple asked me to capture them with a camera. Gladly I rose about 3 inches and did, and then back to my chair. I thought of Paul Celan, one of those poets everything happened to strangely, as it happens to everyone. In German, he wrote, he rose 1 pain inch above the floor. I don't understand, but I understand. Did writing in German make him a little part of whoever set in motion the chain of people talking who pushed his parents under the blue grasses of the Ukraine? No. My name is Ukrainian, and Ukrainians killed everyone but 6 people with my name. Do you understand me now? It hurts to be part of the chain and feel rusty, and also a tiny squeak, now part of what makes everything go. People talk a lot. The more they do, the less I remember in one of my rooms, someone is always dying. It doesn't spoil my time, is what spoils my time. No one can know what they've missed, least of all my father, who was building a beautiful boat from a catalog and might still be. Sometimes I feel him pushing a little bit on my lower back with a palm made of ghost orchids and literal wind. Today I'm holding on to what Nico Case called that teenage feeling. She means one thing, I mean another. I mean to say that just like when I was 13, it has been a hidden pleasure, but mostly an awful pain, talking to you, with a voice that pretends to be shy and actually is, always in search of the question that might make you ask me one in return. I think that I will read this poem called The Book of Oxygen. I'm always a house with nobody in it, not the middle of winter, not even me, taping plastic to the windows to keep cold air filling the house with sails. Now we're moving just fast enough on the couch to see you, about to always spill your limbs, a glass of syntax lying a little golden window on the tip of your tongue. Pass it to me. Let's see what calibrations and kindnesses I am always in your handwriting rediscovering. Always I am into my desk drawer, cabinet of wanders, wandering to rediscover its snowing. Through it, I touch a nail someone gave me to hang a great task on. Say, describe a painting you've never not walked in. Its tiny colored glaciers drifting down to the floor, or something so equally left undone. Like a schedule of instances composed in red pen and left for breezes through a white barn to do. Antennas on hills, decreed by December's infallible bureaucracy, deliver little caskets of tears are in your eyes to be won on the radio songs. I hardly ever understand the ritual. Deliver me everywhere, guardian spider, guardian decade. Through the leaves through me, without further election, deliver me everywhere. Everywhere the radio decrees, the transparent runaway taxi party, inoculate the party of the lost domain. Thus, I silent and unlike a father, hang in watch of the hill, where so full of morning glory and portents, you flew a butterfly for hours in the shape of a kite. You were hardly there beneath your feet. Undisturbed, the grass is blue. And I'll read one more poem. Thank you very much for listening again. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Seth. Thank you, everybody. This poem's called Canada. Canada. By Canada, I've always been fascinated. All that snow and acquiescing, all that emptiness, all those butterflies marshaled into an army of peace. Moving north away from me, Canada has no border. Away like the state, its northern border withers into the sky dome. In a world full of mistrust and self-medication, I've always hated Canada. It makes me feel like I'm shouting at a child for letting a handful of pine needles run through his fist. Canada gets along with everyone while I hang, a dark cloud above the schoolyard. I know we need war, all the skirmishes to keep our borders where we've placed them, all the migration, all the difference. Just like Canada, the Dalai Lama is now in Canada, and everyone is fascinated. When they come to visit me, no one ever leaves me saying, the most touching thing about him is he's so human. Or, I was really glad to hear so many positive ideas regardless of the consequences expressed. Or, I could drink a case of you. No one has ever peddled every inch of thousands of roads through me to raise awareness for my struggle for autonomy. I have pity but no respect for others, which is not compassion, just ordinary love based on attitudes toward myself. I wonder how long I can endure. In Canada, the leaves are falling. When they do, each one rustles, maybe, to the white-tailed deer of sadness. And it's clear that whole country does not exist to make me feel crappy, like a candelabra hanging above the prison world, condemned to freely glow. Thank you. Thanks.